by one family, Aviram and Yurit, and their daughter Osher. They moved here. This is an Oroville community. This is Oroville land, even though it's not part of the physical center of Oroville. There are Oroville lands that are unattached from the rest of Oroville. And Aviram and Yurit and their daughter Osher, they moved here, and their idea was to work on their own personal sadhna. Sadhna is a Sanskrit word, and it translates more or less to the spiritual path. It's the path of the archer's arrow. It's a metaphor for the spiritual path. And they wanted their spiritual path, their spiritual growth, to come through reforestation of the native forest, which is called the tropical dry evergreen forest. I believe the majority of you, or all of you, might have come from Oroville today, so you've probably seen some of this forest. It's a lot of what Oroville is comprised of. And it's an endangered ecosystem. 0.01% left. It's kind of like saying the last polar bear. There's not much left. A few temple grounds, communities like Oroville and a few other parts of India are where there's still tropical dry evergreen forests. So Yurit and Aviram, they wanted to work on their sadhana by planting this endangered ecosystem. And on the 5th day of being here, and mind you, when they got here, there was nothing here. There obviously was no big hut like this, but there were also no trees. Just like in the beginnings of Oroville, in the middle of Oroville, from where the Match Mandir is, you could see the sea. We could see our neighbors. You could wave and yell loud enough. There was nothing in between. It was just red, barren earth that had been stripped away by years and years and years of water. You might ask, well, where did the tropical dry evergreen forest go? It was cut down during colonial times. Nobody really knows why, what the main purpose was. Was it paper? Was it furniture? But either way, it was cut down. And it used to go all the way from Chennai down to Kanyakumari and many, many miles inland. So quite a large forest, a large ecosystem. So yeah, when they moved here and there was nothing here, on the 5th day, a volunteer arrived and said, "Hi, I heard there's a new community in Oroville. Do you mind if I help?" And they said, "We'd love that, but we don't have a toilet, we don't have a kitchen." And the volunteer said, "No problem, I just want to help." And since that day, more than 9 years ago, there's only been one other night in the whole history of the project that the Rosens haven't shared their home with other people. And that now averages about 1,000 volunteers a year. That actually makes us one of the world's largest residential volunteer projects. That's a place where people not only volunteer, but they live there for a period of time also. And eventually, more and more volunteers continued to come. And also, the Rosens eventually had a second daughter, their daughter Shalev. And the community began to grow and it began to take shape. And with that, more opportunities presented themselves, as well as more work. If they were going to continue to open their home to other people, well, that meant maybe now we need to build 1 toilet, or maybe 4 toilets. Now I think we have 18 toilets. 16, thank you, 16 toilets. Somebody's worked on the hygiene team recently. Yeah. As well as, if anybody here has children, you would know, 1 child is enough responsibility. When you have 2, it's not double the work, it's probably 4 times the work. And then you open your home to volunteers, so it became a lot to manage for the Rosens. And even though they had friends who would stay 6 months, 1 year, some people settling for a period of time, nobody was consistently calling it home, other than a few people coming and going for periods of time. And eventually an idea was brought forth, and that was called the Sadhana Forest Environmental Leadership Program. And this was sort of a 3-year internship to spend your time at Sadhana Forest and potentially also make it your home, to learn what it takes to run this place, to help in the growth of the project, and perhaps choose it as your own permanent home. I am an example of that. I arrived as a 2-week volunteer almost 4 years ago. And I was pursuing my life's dream. I was bicycling around the world with no intention of stopping after only 6 months. But now the bicycle is waiting and I am here. Yeah. one thing that's kind of interesting about this and about the environmental leadership program is that a lot of the people that Aviram and Yarit had made friends with, the volunteers over the years, that they had said, why don't you stay with us for a while? Really, the most common answer was, I love you, but I really need to finish school, or I really need to show something. I need to earn money. I need to prove myself in the normal societal manners. And that was the main reason for people to not stay here for an extended period of time. So with the birth of the environmental leadership program, Aviram and Yarit called a lot of the same people back and said, hey, guess what? We've started a 3-year program and we'll give you a certificate at the end of it. And the same people said, okay, I'm there. But really from that, a much larger community was born. And that number of people has changed over time. The 3-year program is now, I guess you could say, 3.5 years or more into its running. So the original participants, such as myself, have finished that 3-year commitment. Many have gone, some have stayed, and many more have joined. As well as other families have joined the community too, and continue to join. I would say at the moment, even though we may not all physically be here, the community is made up of maybe roughly 30, 35 people, including children. And that number will continue to grow before the end of the year. There are people arranging their return to come back here. So what happens with having more people here, more stable community, because 1,000 volunteers are wonderful, and they bring a lot to the table, a lot of great ideas, a lot of ambition, but you need consistency to see the work through, to see one idea finished. It's my assistant. And so with the birth of the 3-year program, we were able to start taking on more and more responsibilities, more ideas, and more work. Before I get to those things, though, I'm going to talk now a little bit about what is Sadhana Forest beyond the reforestation. What is that experience that people are having that continues to attract more and more people here, and why still I would say at least 50% of those 1,000 people and the many of thousands of guests who come here, it's through word of mouth. What is it that's doing that? Well, it's a set of ideals that we live by, I think, that create this experience. And I view them very much as a recipe. You can consider it a recipe for a cake, if you like. And the cake is really good. A lot of people like this cake, the Sadhana Forest cake. And you can understand that there are ingredients in the cake. And you might not understand why each ingredient is there, but somehow collectively they create that beautiful cake, that beautiful experience. And you can also understand that if you take one out, it doesn't mean it'll be good or bad, but it will be different. So somehow these are working so well together that we continue to grow and people continue to ask us to create more sadhana forests around the world and around India. I'll talk about that later also. So the first ideal that I think I should mention is, if you recall, Oroville is a city of human unity, and Sadhana Forest is a community of human unity. You may have noticed coming through here, there actually isn't a door on Sadhana Forest, as well as in the hut that you came in. That's both physical and metaphorical. There isn't really a door separating us for those who want to be here. We would like every person to feel welcome at Sadhana Forest. This is a very difficult task, of course, but we do our very best to accommodate all who wish to be here and to work together with them. And there are many reasons for this. If you consider our society, it's very, very fragmented. We don't really have the idea of village or community anymore. It's very much fading away. I'm from the United States, and I can tell you that beginning from birth in America, we begin the fragmentation. We begin the separation from each other. It's not uncommon where I come from that within a few days of being home from the hospital, the parents put their child in a separate room instead of keeping their child close to them through the night. And this then goes on further with preschool and school, and then work, and then moving out from your families, and it's a shame to move back with your family or to take care of your parents. Everybody should be independent from each other. And we have a place for sick people, and a place for mentally sick people, and a place for old people. But we don't really have a place for all people. And in my opinion of community, it includes all people, all ages, well and unwell, and to do our best to take care of each other. And that's definitely something that Sadhana Forest and Oroville are trying for. What else? We live as a vegan community here. If you don't know this word vegan, it more or less means a very, very strict vegetarian. A vegan doesn't consume anything that comes from an animal. So that doesn't mean just the meat. It also means the milk, the cheese, the butter, the ghee, paneer, lassi, curd, yogurt, and all of the other animal products that are out there, honey, many, many other things that you might not actually consider or know of are being put into our food. And again, there are many, many reasons for this. Now, one detail, in case you're thinking about being here, you don't need to be vegan to be at Sadhana Forest. But we want our way of living here to reflect ahimsa. That's the pursuit of nonviolence, a life of nonviolence. And we want our food and our choices here to reflect that also. So that's why we choose a vegan diet for the food that we make inside the community, and we eat all of our meals together. So what are some of those reasons for being vegan? Well, if you consider ahimsa, it applies to everything that I'm about to say. Think about the environmental aspect of eating meat or dairy. Right now, the number one reason that trees are cut down in the Amazon and around the world is to either grow food to feed animals for an increasing demand of animals, or to clear the land for those animals to graze upon, to walk upon. That's the number one reason that we're still cutting down trees. The irony being, we're already feeding 2/3 of the food that we grow on this planet into the mouths of animals, and that food, that meat and milk, goes to much less than 1/3 of the human population. So you have human suffering and human starvation in there, as well as environmental destruction. Abhiram said it very nicely one time. He said, why reforest with our hands when we're deforesting with our mouths? And it makes perfect sense. Again, considering the idea of ahimsa, in order to get milk, you must take it from the mother. And that milk was designed for that mother's child. And there is stress involved in that amongst many, many other issues, which are very arguably unkind and unfair to the animals, especially in an era when we know that we don't need that in order to survive. Now this is true for everybody sitting in this room, but it may not be true for the people on the backside of the Himalayas. But in my opinion, changing the world isn't about changing the world, it's about taking responsibility for yourself to live the way that you would like to see the world. So this is one of the reasons, or some of the reasons, that we have a vegan diet and lifestyle in Sadhana Forest. What else? You may have heard in Oroville, the mother had said, may there be no exchange of money within Oroville. Well, we're trying to take that as literally as we can here at Sadhana Forest, and we run on what's called a gift economy. A gift economy is different than an exchange economy, which is what we're all familiar with. In an exchange economy, if I have something that you want or need, I will give it to you as long as you give me something back right away. It's an exchange, one-to-one. In a gift economy, it requires 3 people. And that third person actually isn't a person, it's an idea. That idea is faith. And I laugh at that a little bit because before living here, I never would have used the word faithful to describe myself. That's just not how I look at myself or how I describe the world. But I'd be lying now if I didn't tell you that I am faithful. I'm faithful that if I continue to work hard to take care of the environment, to take care of the people that share in my home with me, that hopefully in turn they or someone else will also take care of me or the community or whatever it may be. And that's how a gift economy works. I have something that you want or need, and I'm able to give it to you, so I will. But I'm not expecting anything in return. And perhaps one day I may need that or something else, and hopefully it comes to me from somewhere else. Now, this also includes money, of course. You know, money is the currency of the world. It is still how things are purchased, whatever it may be. So it's not as if we live without money, but we're not living in the normal exchange of money. And in fact, we never really have much money. And there's a key reason for the fact that we don't have much money. People have been wonderful and kind and put the roof over our heads and provided the money to create a sadhana forest in Haiti, and now we're starting another one in Kenya, and all of the other work that we do. But if you consider what our work is environmental and social. And if you consider why most people save their money, they're saving it for the rainy day, for the future, when something might go wrong. But if your work is an environmental work or social work, then that means the rainy day is here, right? There's enough work to be done that we could all go out there and spend the rest of our lives dedicated to fixing it, and we'd still need help from others, because there's a lot to be done. So, more or less, we spend money when it comes to us, because why wait? Why wait to fix the roof that needs to be fixed? Why wait to dig a hole when we need to save water? Let's do it. And that's really how we go about here. So it's a constant flux. In fact, I'll tell you now that really there's a scale going on here, a ratio, of only 2 details which limit the potential of the work that we do at Sadhana Forest. One is the human resource. It's people like myself and a couple other people in this room who are dedicated to seeing the work completed. Like I said, the long-term volunteers. There's always a changing number of these, and there always could be more of these to accomplish more work. And the other resource, of course, is money, because it does cost money in order to purchase a roof or whatever it might be. So our work just floats on these 2 scales, what we can do and the future of what we'll do. What else? Well, Sadhana Forest, Oroville, very much places of spiritual growth. You can imagine, I don't use the word faithful to describe myself, so I typically wouldn't use the word spiritual either. For myself, I say personal growth. But actually, to me, that is one of the better qualities of Oroville, is that there isn't a spiritual doctrine. There's not something that you have to do to believe in yourself, to grow. It's a place, again, a city for human unity. And I very much appreciated that. Again, I'm speaking from personal perspective here. When I came here, that there was no prescription of how I should grow, who I should be, or what I should believe in. Just that I was encouraged to grow in any way that I like. And everything that I've mentioned so far really works as a recipe to create growth, especially when you then apply those details to, we call it seva. You could call it work if you want, but seva, it's another Sanskrit word, and it means service. You could say karma yoga, you can say sadhana, integral yoga. They all share the same ideas of taking care of others, and through that practice, you grow as a person. Planting trees somehow teaches you something about yourself. Taking care of people that you only met the day before somehow teaches you about yourself. So we do what we can here to encourage personal growth, spiritual growth within individuals. Maybe 2 more. One, we try to live without competition at Sadhana Forest. If you think about everything that I've said so far, except for the spiritual growth, they're really rooted in competition. You know, our economy is rooted in competition. What else did I mention? Our food. Wow, that's a huge competition. It's a competition with the environment. It's a competition with each other. It's a competition with the animals. It's domination. If you think about it, what is competition? It's one person trying to dominate something else. Again, another example from America. Maybe I own a house, and in front I want to have a nice big green lawn. It's a very American idea, you know? Beautiful grass as far as I can see. That's a huge competition with all of the rest of nature that would like to grow there in that healthy soil, hopefully. We really struggle to dominate over things. We dominate over each other. We dominate politically, religiously, male to female, female to female, male to male. It's so present in our workplace, in our school. It's really at the root of our society. But we also know from experience, from science, from so many things, that we benefit more as being a cooperative society, and that's actually who we are. It's better for our health, and it's better for the longevity, the length of our life, and everything around us. Why try to grow a lawn when in fact flowers and trees are so beautiful, and they also sustain life and maybe provide food? So we do our very best here to live without competition. We have a very, very low hierarchy within the community, and we've removed other models of competition from within the community. And the last detail that I'll mention for now is the philosophy which we raise our children with. And this philosophy is called unschooling. If you're not familiar with the term unschooling, don't let the word confuse you. It doesn't mean no schooling. It doesn't mean no education for your children. Think of it differently. Think of this: child-led education. Most educational models are from the top down. I am the top. I am the adult. I'm going to decide what a child should learn, how they should learn, at what pace, and possibly regardless of what they would actually like to be learning. I know this was true for my model of education in the United States, and this is probably true for the majority of people in this room. We were expected to get good marks, even on the subjects we didn't understand or we didn't like. We were expected to compete with the child sitting next to us, to do at least as good or better than them. With unschooling, it's my job as an adult not to tell the child what to learn or how to learn, but instead to listen to them and facilitate who they want to be. You want to be a painter? I'll get you some paint. You want to be a mathematician? I'll teach you math, or I'll find somebody to teach you math. You listen to the child's needs and wants, and you do your best to encourage them to grow. I like to think of children as flowers. And, or you could think of a bonsai tree, bonsai trees. You can control that. And what controls the growth of a flower? Sunlight and water, how much you give it, right? So you can block the sun, you can limit the water, and you can control the way that flower, that child would grow. Or you can give it all the sun and all the water that it can handle, and let it be the most beautiful potential flower that it could be. It's absolutely a true model, in my opinion. Yeah. I wasn't familiar with unschooling before living here. I was a professional nanny. It was my career to raise other people's children. But after 4 years of being exposed to it and meeting people from all over the world, both adults, children, and children that have grown to be adults, involved with unschooling, I very, very much encourage all of you to look further into that. There's something to be learned from it, if not practiced. Okay, I'm just going to grab my water bottle and trying to. Now I'd like to jump into what is that work that we're doing here. Well, there are several projects that we're doing. Some large, some small, all important. You are one of our projects. Surprise, we tricked you. Not really. The Eco Film Club has been going on for about 4.5 years, and really it's just a sharing of ideas. We share our experience, we share our community with people who would like to come and visit. We also share the idea of the film that we're showing that night, and of course, throughout the evening there's a lot of communication and sharing between people who come here. A lot of the development of Sadhana Forest was actually born through relationships created on a Friday night of the Eco Film Club. And we've done this every Friday for 4.5 years, except for the Friday of Cyclone Thane 1 year ago. And in fact, we were ready, we were lucky. Our solar electrical system wasn't destroyed, we had food, we had water. But considering most people couldn't drive out of their driveway down their street, we canceled it for the night. And this will probably continue on for the rest of the history of the project. Many thousands of people come, and in fact, we never know how many are coming. It's hard to tell. I think there are about 45 on the bus today, but there's more than 45 people in this room, so some people came independently. Not to mention the 20 to 50 that are in a tour over in another hut right now that are guests here just for 1 week, part of Mark Vella's Caravan of Love. Yeah, some eco-film clubs have 20 people. Some have had over 250, not counting our community, so about 400 people. Quite an experience. When you drove in, you may have noticed a sign that said Children's Land on the right. You might have noticed a small mud pool. It's drying up, sadly, because there was no monsoon this year. Behind there, it's 2.7 acres of our land called Children's Land. It's just what it sounds like. It's some of the 70 acres of Sadhana Forest dedicated to the children of the world. The children come here, children of all walks of life. They could be village children, gypsy children, children from schools in Oroville, children from schools throughout Tamil Nadu. All variety of children come here, and it's this place where they help to decide the future of that place, of that space. We're providing a holistic, growing, healing environment and offering them our experience and knowledge, but through their direction. through the direction of what they would like to do in the time that they're there. And this has been going on for about 3 years now. And one of us will mention tonight if somebody would like to come here and participate in that. We'll mention later on when you can do that. Another project that we've done with children that we would like to do more, but again, it's those resources. Everything is limited by those resources. Is our Green Kindergarten project. So far we have visited 2 kindergartens, local kindergartens. And what we do is we recognize that our neighbors might not be able to unschool their children. Both parents might have to work, whatever it might be. And we can't provide that need either here for the children all to come here. So some of these kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, are being put into kindergartens and preschools. And unfortunately, the condition of these schools is lacking. The health and well-being of these schools are lacking. The first school that we worked on had a big hole in the roof, which meant during the monsoon, so for about 4 months of the year, a third of the floor was flooded. That meant mosquitoes, unhealthy air. The paint was coming off the walls. There was no working toilet. There was no water tank. We fixed all of those things and built a small organic garden in the front. The next school, we focused even more on a garden and built a large permaculture garden. And we'd like to continue to do this with our neighbors until at least, hopefully, every school around here is somewhere where kids want to go and might not get malaria. Actually, we don't have malaria in this area. I don't want to start any rumors. But yeah, we'd like them to have a better place to be. A lot of people who come to Sadhana Forest, even for a day like today, say, I like this place. I'd like to take it home with me. I can't stay here. I'd like to take it home with me. So many people have said that eventually we got around to creating a small social network. It's called the Sadhana Forest Ambassadors Program. If you go to the website, www.howdoichangetheworld.org, it's very modest, or just go to sadhanaforest.org and follow the links. You'll see a world map with pins all over this map, and these are ambassadors. And we're not a franchise. We don't care about our name. But if you want to call yourself a Sadhana Forest ambassador, we only ask a few things. 1, you don't charge money to people. If you were to have an event, that you don't charge money. 2, no drugs or alcohol. This is a community without drugs, alcohol, or cigarettes. And 3, if you provide food, then the food is only vegan. But many of the people who are ambassadors are just there to continue to share ideas, to see other people's ideas, or to share their own. For example, one of the first people to join it was a woman from New York, and she just wrote on her profile, I'll be turning off my air conditioner every Wednesday during the summer. It's small, but if everybody did it, it'd be massive, you know? So it's another attempt at sharing and keeping people involved and inspired to continue improving the world that we live in. Okay. I came back just myself with 11 other people, including Abhiram and his family, just 3 days ago from Madhya Pradesh. We had a wonderful, wonderful experience. We spent about 10 days in a small village called Lunyakeri. It's near the city of Ujjain, or a little bit further is Indore. And in this small village, 600 people, is a very special man. His name is Prahlad, who won the highest civil honor in India 2 years ago for his effort to inspire rebirth of a traditional type of music called Kabir. Kabir was a poet 400 years ago, and his poetry was turned into music. It's not one type of music, but it's his poetry to music. So there are many versions of this, many, many beautiful versions of this. And this man, Prahlad, has created a new popularity in this traditional art, so much that the Indian government has recognized him. Yet humbly, he still, despite his world fame and honor, still lives in his home village of 600 people with his family and with his father. And every year, he has a week-long festival, a week-long yatra of Kabir, where they perform all night long in different villages and cities, and then give processions during the day, and of course everything is for free. And Prahladji and Abhiram got to talking about the problems that they face in his area. Well, it's very deforested, and for 8 months of the year, the people in this village have to go 2 kilometers to collect water, and it's dirty water. There's no water being kept even though there's heavy annual rain every year. So we went out there as a group, determined to help begin working on this, and built a large dam. Actually, it was an already existing dam. There are many in the area. The government has built some, private people have built some, but very few were functioning or functioning properly, or some were destroyed by people who just felt they needed the water for themselves. And there was one fairly large dam, but it again wasn't reaching its potential. So we brought in some machines and built a much larger dam now, which can save a lot more water. And we'll go back. Abhiram will be going back in May, and we'll continue to go back building more dams downstream from this, and hopefully in a few years' time, raising their water table significantly. I should say that's the number one work that we do here. It's water conservation. Really, the coolest part about reforestation isn't that you plant trees. It's the fact that all you have to do is save water and be patient. You don't actually need to plant trees to reforest. If you're in an area where other trees might come to seed the ground, there just needs to be water in the ground. And that's what we spend at least 8 months of our year doing, is reshaping the earth here. And this is what you'll see when we take our tour, reshaping the earth so that the water stays, so it doesn't run off somewhere else. And we haven't measured our water table in a few years, but it was measured every year for the first 6 years, and it went up on average 1 meter a year. That's really significant. And what you see growing around us, actually the majority of it wasn't planted by us. It's growing because there's water there. And that doesn't benefit just us. Our neighbors, their houses are now shaded and covered too, because there's water in the ground. So this is the hopeful goal in Madhya Pradesh. I also picked up a cold the day that I left to go there, and I'm still getting over it. Yeah, 2 more details. One would be our other community in Haiti. And if she doesn't mind me singling her out, in the back is Francie. And she just came back from managing that project for 7 of the last 8 or 9 months. Right? Is that right? Yeah. Sadhana Forest Haiti was begun 3 years ago. By Abhiram and the family, myself, and a group of other volunteers, short-term volunteers who were here that came with us there. And in essence, it's the same community, the same values, the same practices, and the same environmental work. But because it's a different country, of course that means we have to go about the work differently. What does that mean there? Well, in this area, we don't have a risk of people cutting down our trees. But in deforested areas, that's a huge risk. In highly deforested areas, in countries like Haiti, one of the most deforested countries in the world. What that means is that a person goes out and cuts down any tree that they can find so that they can make it into charcoal, and then they can sell that charcoal to their neighbor so that they have money, and the neighbor can now cook their dinner, and they have money to buy their own dinner. And it's a downward spiral, because eventually there's no trees left to sell to your neighbor as charcoal. This takes place in India, this takes place in Africa, this takes place in most heavily deforested, developing parts of the world. So how do you address that? That's a very complicated issue. It's much more than just the need for trees. Well, since our work is reforestation, we've decided that our focus will be to grow and distribute, in the beginning, beneficial food-producing trees. So trees that provide food security as well as economic opportunity. And we spent most of the last year, now actually it's longer than that, the last almost 2 years, growing and distributing a very, very special tree called the Maya nut. In Creole it's called the chukagu. It's a tree worth looking up, M-A-Y-A, Maya nut. And we helped to reintroduce it to the island. It's native to all of the Caribbean and Central America. And what makes this tree special? Well, it can grow in most types of soil. It's drought resistant once it's growing. It's a canopy tree, so it's huge, and as a result, grows 200 to 400 kilograms of food per year. Food that is almost a complete nutrition, complete in its nutrition. And food that you can not only turn into a drink that tastes a bit like coffee and chocolate, you can also turn it into flour to make into bread. And you can also cook it, and it has the consistency of a potato. This tree has rehabilitated communities all over Central America and the Caribbean where it has been reintroduced. And we have now distributed over 40,000 of these trees, and also brought in food from Mexico to inspire people to take care of their baby trees for the amount of years it'll take until they produce food, so that they have an idea of what they can cook with it, what it will taste like, and the benefits of having it. And as this takes place, and perhaps other beneficial trees, food-producing trees, we will then begin to focus, more focus on the large-scale water conservation and reforestation, when a little bit of that risk of planting trees and having them cut down might be removed. And we're doing this amongst other things and working with other groups as well too, which are trying to address these needs, including, of course, the local community. I just want to say, in case your image of Haiti is a dangerous, difficult place, it's a wonderful place. It carries a lot of the risks that other places carry as well too. Of course, it's humanity, it's civilization. I love it there. The people are wonderful. There's a huge interest in the local community to improve their situation, even if they might not have the means to do so. There's a very large interest. And where we live is a very special place because it's geographically cut off from the rest of the country. You have to take a boat to get there, or a road that's only now being built through the mountains. So it's a very unique place on the border with the Dominican Republic, and it's called Ansapit. And we're now planning to do the exact same thing. Well, I shouldn't say the exact same thing, but again, to recreate another Sadhana Forest in Kenya, in northern Kenya, where we now have an agreement for the land and we're registered as an NGO, and hopefully soon, in the next few months, we'll be purchasing the land. And their needs are very much the same as the Haitians. It's heavily, heavily deforested without any safe supply of food. So again, we will focus on the distribution of beneficial food trees while working separately on water conservation and reforestation. Maybe we can take the next 10 minutes. Everything I've said I've gone over very fast. As I said in the beginning, they're all topics on their own. But perhaps you have some specific questions I can answer for you now? Hi.
Can you take the Maya tree to other places in the world? Can you take it to Kenya and here to India? Or?
The answer is probably no, because one of the reasons that the Maya nut hadn't been reintroduced sooner to Haiti, though other groups had tried, is that when the seed falls from the tree, it only has 10 days. And since it's coming from another country, between the shipping and customs, every time it failed, basically. So that's why there was so much lack of success before. But the other reason to not take it further, it wouldn't just be the limit of 10 days, it's that introducing foreign species to an ecosystem presents a lot of danger. And it's hard to say what that will be. For example, when we go through our forest, you'll see thousands and thousands of trees. 2 that look very similar to each other, and 1 which is a long, skinny pine, which you see these buildings are made from. We never planted any of these. All 3 are not native species that were introduced by other people. The acacias, which are the 2 that look similar to each other, they're called work tree, and they are doing a little bit of work, keeping some of that soil from running away while we're planting. But at the same time, they're a nuisance because they grow so fast, and they don't really benefit the soil. So we have to pull them out as we plant trees in an area. And if left unchecked, the tropical dry evergreen might never take shape as long as those acacias were there. So there's a very big risk to introducing. Ask any Australian if you want to hear. Any Australians in the room? Yeah? No? But if you ever want to hear the risks of introducing foreign species, talk to people from Hawaii or Australia. They'll tell you all about it. Another question. How large did you say the land was? The land here is 70 acres, just shy of 70 acres. Yeah. And to date, we've planted about 27,000 trees. No, to date. Which isn't quite a lot by reforestation standards, 27,000 trees. But we actually take our time and plant trees slowly and carefully and have about a 90% success rate, which is a lot by reforestation standards. Many times a project is proud to say we planted 1 million trees in a weekend, 4 types of trees, 1 million, that's really not a forest, and then there's no aftercare. So we do our very best to take care of each tree that grows here. Miss, you had your hand up in the back just before?
Thanks so much for the gift.
Sure.
What sort of seeds are they?
That's Rosella. Rosella, which is, well, most seeds, generally you plant 1 to 2 times the depth, the size of the seed, the depth in the ground. So you can plant it very shallowly, or perhaps even sprout it in a wet paper towel and then plant it if you want. And Rosella, maybe you've had Rosella tea or juice before. It's a really nutritious, tasty leaf, very, very high in vitamin C. And you can take the flower petals before it opens, the shell of the flower, or the leaves themselves and dry them and make tea from it. It's a great little plant.
Do you know if it's okay for dogs?
I don't. One question here was, is it okay for dogs? I don't know. I've never heard otherwise. No, it grows pretty easily on its own.
We're going to plant it with 30 dogs.
You shouldn't need to transplant it, as much as I know. It grows pretty easily on its own, just in this environment. Yeah. Maybe one more question? Hi.
Do you have an address from a web address in the project in Kenya?
It's being developed right now as we speak, actually. It was started about 2 days ago, so it's on its way.
If you have one.
If you visit sadhanaforest.org, you can connect to all of these things. Yeah. That was a quick question. We have time for another.
I have another one.
Yeah.
Have you tried growing, because I was here a couple of days before and I saw it before, and I saw that you plant them pretty small. But have you tried growing them in a nursery to a bigger size and then planting them?
Some of them, it depends on what you saw. Some of them are this large.
Yeah.
It depends on what type of tree it is. And in fact, we don't grow the trees here. We have in the past, but Oroville, the reason we don't continue to have a nursery here is that there are many established tropical dry evergreen forests in Oroville, where now they can continue on as a nursery, which they had to start 45 years ago when there were no nurseries here. So we purchase from them and allow them to do what they're doing, and it helps to sustain their projects. And in turn, that frees up our time a little bit to do other projects, like maybe Children's Land, for example. Instead of caring for a nursery, we still have to care for the ones that we purchase and bring here as we plant them, but we don't spend the whole year focused on that. Yeah. And typically, I think we go for a 2-year growth before planting for most of the trees. Okay, I think that's enough questions for now. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Just kidding. You can tell I like to talk, and I'm bad at jokes. But now it's time to see things in action. So if you wouldn't mind putting on your shoes and meeting me right out front, and I have one request, and you'll probably hear me say it again. We are a pretty large group, so please do your very best to stay together, or if you're not that interested in what I'm saying, make sure you stay to the back so that people can walk in front of you, because there's quite a lot to see, and I'd like you to be relaxed and enjoy yourself at the same time. So I'll see you out front in a moment.